Introducing the new DigiCert. As the leading provider of high-assurance SSL, TLS, and PKI certificates, DigiCert is all about improving security across the web and IoT. DigiCert is committed to helping customers and partners successfully deploy identity, authentication, and encryption solutions. They'll even help you figure out which certificate you need to secure your web domains, apps, devices, and more. Check out the Cert Wizard tool under the SSL tab on digicert.com. The average time between being hacked and realizing you've been hacked is 1 year. Can you afford to let an intruder roam your network for that long? Can your company weather the fallout when this comes to light? Black Hills Information Security can find the bad guys in your network and train you to do it yourself. Email consulting@blackhillsinfosec.com to find out how a hunt teaming engagement can help you find a persistent threat in your network. Signal Sciences is the industry's first web protection platform that works in any cloud, any container, any platform as a service, and any modern application architecture. The Signal Sciences web protection platform can be deployed in next-generation WAF, RASP, or reverse proxy modes, giving customers ultimate flexibility and coverage. Protect your web applications with Signal Sciences web protection platform. Signal Sciences, protecting applications, connecting teams. For more information, check them out at signalsciences.com/PSW.
Welcome back, everyone, to Paul's Security Weekly. Make sure you check out our on-demand material. Some of our previously recorded webcasts are now available, including the state of security in trading and education, the state of endpoint protection and response, and you can find that all at securityweekly.com/on-demand. Everyone loves using Nmap and the Nmap Scripting Engine. We don't always write NSE scripts, though. Writing scripts for Nmap, my mask is fogging up. Writing scripts for Nmap can be a bit intimidating at first, but here to tell us all about it is Jason Wood from Paladin Security.
Hey, everybody. Thank you for that introduction from Dark Helmet there.
More like Dick Helmet.
Kind of hard to smoke a cigar in the mask.
My son was watching Spaceballs last night, and all I could think of is Rick Moranis.
The fact
I'm
you
watching
suck
Paul do the interest.
Mega Maid has gone from suck to blow.
I apologize to our audio listeners. I did the entire monologue for this segment in some kind of gas mask contraption. Apparently, when you buy CBD oil online, they feel the need to send you with some kind of apparatus like that. And I thought I'd use it as an introduction to the show, just because it was really hard to breathe, like talking like that. I was like,
we could hear.
We noticed.
And then it was fogging up. I couldn't see the not appropriate for the show. That was just a joke. Yeah. In any case, Jason, I'm very excited for this technical segment. You've got slides and everything, so please have at it.
Alrighty, so I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. For those who are on the audio, I will do my best to describe what I'm doing.
Oh, and well, they won't see the demo, but your slides are in the show notes.
They are in the show notes.
Yep.
And this would be one I'd if you're interested in this, I'd recommend checking out the video feed because I'm actually going to be writing a couple of NSE scripts live while we're on there. So we'll see how this goes. So let me get that shared.
Live demos are always dangerous, but God be with you.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Demo gods are mean and spiteful. All right, can you guys see my screen?
Not at all.
Not at all. That's awesome.
We can see you. You look beautiful.
Well, I mean, we can see a screen, but it's behind you at the... Oh.
There
you go.
it
Now we
is.
can see it.
Now we can see the screen? Oh, fabulous. All right, so let's go ahead and dive into this. I'm going to race through the slides pretty quick so we don't spend too much time talking about Lua and whatnot. So we're going to take a look at the Nmap Scripting Engine. Really, if you're in security, I'm sure you have used Nmap a number of times. And one of the things that Nmap has had really for quite a while now is the scripting engine behind it. And the impetus behind the scripting engine was they wanted to be able to do more customized and more powerful checks, but they didn't want to have to write all of this in C or C++. They didn't want to deal with buffer overflows and things like that. And so Fyodor and the Nmap crew decided to use the Lua scripting language for this, since it was already a friendly and well-documented and fairly popular scripting engine. And I did a quick check after updating my Kali instance yesterday. There are up to 579 NSE scripts that come with an install of Nmap now. So and that's up from, I don't know, probably about 50 scripts or so from last year. So it's slowly creeping up there. The nice thing about this is it allows us, if we learn some of this, to create customized checks ourselves. And there's certainly individuals we know who've written some of these NSE scripts that have made it into the Nmap project. So why are we going to write NSE scripts? And one of the things that I got interested in this was I do penetration testing. We want to provide things that are useful bits of evidence to clients or to be able to reproduce things to our clients. I thought, well, it would be cool if I could write, NSE scripts to do that for some of my penetration tests. So that's why I got started in this. Your use case may vary. But that was what I was interested in, just the idea of extending what we can do inside of Nmap and add on to it. So to start off, we need to know a little bit about Lua itself. Like I said, Lua's been around for a while. It's been around since '93. It's very lightweight, and it's easy to be embedded. Now, there are some pluses and minuses with that, which we'll get to here. Actually, one of the big minuses to me, as I started digging into this, is actually Lua doesn't have a regular expression engine built into it, because that would essentially, as they say, double the size of the install. So that was a little bit of an issue, but it is a very popular scripting language. It's been used. Wireshark uses it. It's used in video games. If you did add-ons in World of Warcraft, I'm sure you're familiar with it. So real quick, let's just run through some syntax. Comments are fairly straightforward. Everything is just a dash is a comment, and doesn't really have the idea of a multi-line comment. We just use multiple hyphens and blocks like you see here. Assignment is really simple. We don't have to specify types for our variables or anything like that. You just give the variable name equal to some value. We can overload our assignments. So if I want to create 3 variables and assign values to 2 of them, I can simply do that by A, B, C as my variables equals 0, 1. And so then if I print A, B, and C, then I get 0, 1, and nil, because C is a variable. It's valid, but it hasn't had anything assigned to it. We can pick that up later. So you could do some things like that where you overload your multi-variable assignments in a single line. One thing that you want to know about, though, is scope inside of variables. So if we do in Lua, if we do just foobar as our variable here and set it to some value like 45, like I have on the screen here, that's a global variable. If we're doing something inside of a function, then we want to use the local keyword. So local foobar is 45, and then it's only valid, that scope is that variable is only accessible inside of the function. And so that way we don't get stepped on maybe by a variable used somewhere else in some other script. Functions also are really simple to declare, and in some ways it reminds me a little bit of Python here with the limited amount of brackets and things like that. The indentation or the white space doesn't matter quite as much. But to declare a function, we just say function, give it the name of the function, in our case in Nmap, maybe attack some host, and give it the arguments. And typically this is going to be the host and the port that we're going after. And then inside we had declare a local variable, give it to some value, do some stuff, and then return the result back out of the function. And then we just use the end keyword to end this function. And now we can call this function really from anywhere in our script. So it's really simple, very readable in that regards. Tables are something, though, that I will say caught me off guard. Inside of Lua, every data structure is a table. If you want an array, you declare it's declared as a table. Linked lists, a matrix, whatever, they're all tables. So anytime you're dealing with some kind of data structure beyond a simple variable, it is A equals, and then you use the open curly bracket and the end curly bracket, and now you have essentially, in this case, like say, created a new array, and then you can assign values to it using a for loop, like I have here on the screen, and just iterate through that and fill up our array. If statements are also really simple. If the variable is less than or greater than some other variable or value, then go do stuff, and then we just end it. In how they do it, if you want to do an else if type of thing, it's if, and then our condition, then we'll have what we're going to do, else if, combined together into a single word. Our next condition, then something else, and then for our final base condition, we just use else, and we could toss an error message here or what have you, and we finish that if statement off with an end to close that out. For loops are really also simple. I've got an example here of looping through, let's say, an HTTP response and pulling out the cookies, cookie values from that response body. In this case, you just do for, and I'm using a function called pairs to pull out the cookie names. And one of the things that Lua has is this concept of an underscore variable. So if I did a loop over an array or a structure of cookies, for example, if I'm pulling things out using the pairs, I'm going to get two values out of it. Well, the first one is just stuff that I don't need. I want the cookie. And so I just use for underscore comma for whatever else comes out of this, the pairs function. Cookie, that's the one I want, in pairs response.cookies do, and then print the cookie. The underscore is just a way of getting rid of garbage data that we don't need, but we have to handle in some way. And then we end that loop. All right, I'm going to skip through the while loop. It's similar to the function, the for loops. We just do a while. A is some condition, do something or other, and then we end that. And now let's go ahead and take a look at NSE now that I've run through Lua as quickly as I could. There are really three things in an NSE script that we have to have for the structure of each script. You have to have the head, the rule, and the action. The head is just the header of the script. This is where we're going to do things like declare libraries that we're going to import. We'll give it a description. We can put things like the license that we're using for this script. One that's really important to have in here is the categories that this script applies to. So you need to have the categories equals to one of the different or more of the different categories that this NSE script applies to. By default, if we just use the script and tell Nmap to fire all of them, it's going to run everything that's considered a safe script. And so if you wanted your script to apply to that, you'd have to give the safe category. Then we have the rule. What is it that is going to be the condition that we're going to match to actually invoke this script? Because Nmap's not going to invoke a script relating to, let's say, IMAP for a web server. So the rule is where we define that. And we use a variable called port rule is equal to, and that's where we set the condition. Here I use a library called shortport and told it to look for HTTP, so shortport.http. So as long as we have a web server, be that on port 80 or 443 or what have you, this condition will match, and then the action fires, and that's where we're going to actually go and do stuff. Go hack something, run an exploit, or check some condition. I mentioned the script categories. Here's a brief look at them. The important thing to note is by default, it's not going to run things like brute force, the brute category, denial of service, exploit, intrusive, things like that, unless you tell it to. Because what they didn't want us to do is start crashing things. And one of the things, again, to keep in mind, you have to go back to that port rule. We have to match it to a port. Nmap is a port scanner. And so, none of these scripts are going to fire unless they match a port or service. And so everything that we do is connected to a port, and we have to have our results associated to that port. On the example here, I've got a script that pulled out the cookies, quick little script that I wrote from
Jason,
a web page.
Is it really a port, or is it more like a service? Like if you're scanning Nmap with dash lowercase s capital V and it's determining the service, anything that matches HTTP, regardless of the port number, will trigger, correct?
Yeah, so it depends honestly. Using the short port syntax that I gave,
Yeah.
it's going to say, it's going to depend on the version detection to say, yeah, that was an HTTP server, will run this.
Mm-hmm.
I could set it up to just say port 80.
Mm-hmm.
And now, even though it's an HTTP check, let's say it's for port 80, it won't fire on 443 or 8080 or
Right.
anything else that marks up comes up as HTTP. So you do have to be aware of that when you're writing your scripts. So yeah, that's a good
in the vulnerability scanning world, we used to call that the knowledge base,
Okay.
which
yeah.
was specific to a product at a company where we both worked at one time at the same
Yep.
time.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I mean, and Nmap tries to do. It just depends on how intelligent you want to be with your
Script.
your NSE script.
Yeah.
You can write it to be really hard coded and limited, or you can take advantage of some of these
Right.
things like the short port.http function.
Yeah,
now
you can
matches
say
any
HTTP,
servers.
but it has to be HTTP version, a specific version of HTTP or whatever.
Right. So yeah. Thanks for calling that out. That's a great point to bring up. I've got a bunch of libraries built into Nmap's NSE. I'm not going to go over these really. Just highlighted a couple of key ones here: the Nmap library, NSE debug, STD NSE, standard NSE library, and short port. But you don't have to go out and write your own SMB library, for example. That already exists. So that's quite nice without having to go reverse and figure out all of that stuff. All right. You know what? I'm going to skip this section here and just go to writing some scripts. And this is where we pray that the demo gods actually like me today. All right. So what do I have running? I've got on my system, I've got just a WordPress install that I stood up. This is just a default installation. Nothing very exciting.
Cactus.
Got a cactus.
It's a PLA reference, anyway.
And so we're going to go ahead and just write our first NSE script. So this is just a NSE script, the structure of it. Let's close this out and create a new script entirely. And we'll call this,
Let's call it
first.nse.
I was going to say, let's call it fuck the cactus.
Cactus.
We'll keep it PG.
Cactus.
Cactus.
Oh man, I think I already
Cactus?
went over that.
Cactus?
Anyway,
Cactus.
Cactus.
go ahead,
Cactus.
Jason. Do your thing, man. Do your thing.
All righty. So let's break this up. First off, we need to get the different sections here. I'm going to mark those out so we can see them. We've got to have the head. We've got to have the rule.
Always got to have the head.
The rule instead of the ru. And the action. You ever love how you get on camera and you can't type anymore?
Every damn time.
All right, so let's start out.
Can you make it bigger?
Can I make it bigger?
The text on the screen. Control.
See how we do this.
Can you control plus it in Visual Studio or something?
Command plus.
Yep. There you go. Bigger.
What's that?
A little bigger.
Perfect.
A little more. Yeah, that's good.
There we go.
All righty. Thanks for calling that. So we've got the head, the rule, and the action all set up. We're going to do a quick port scan of my WordPress install. And we'll just do, to match this, we're going to go ahead and import the short port library. And so the keywords for that are just local short port, require is the keyword we need, and then we just give the name of the library we're importing. And we can give it a description. We'll do hello world because every programming how-to has to have that. And as I mentioned before, we got to have the categories equal to safe, or Nmap won't run it.
Yeah, it's interesting how a lot of those components have to be there, and I can see some people being put off to be like, oh, I gotta learn how to work with their infrastructure, but it's really easy, actually.
Yeah, there's a lot of things you'll look at and you'll see in the script NSC scripts that are written. They look pretty complicated and stuff, and so it can throw you off. Really, you don't have to get that complex, and that's why I wanted to start here with something just really simple looking to show exactly what's required. We could put usage and stuff like that, examples in here, but I'm going to skip that for the documentation, features that we would want to have in a real script. And then we're going to set the next part is we need to have our port rule, right? And that is going to be shortport.http. So as long as we have an HTTP service, this will go ahead and fire. And then we'll just go down here to the action, and we just call it action is equal to function. And we have to tell it that we're going to call the host and the port that's associated with that host. And then we'll have the ending statement here. And then all we'll do is just, I suppose I could do this in one line, but we'll do it in two for clarity. Right? Local output is hello world, and then we'll return my output. And that's it. We have an Nmap script ready to roll. And if the demo gods like me, it'll work. So we'll do an Nmap.
Can you make it bigger?
How's that?
Bigger.
Oh yeah, that's big. That's
There
what
we
she
go.
said.
There we
Oh
go.
yeah, I can actually read it from here.
Yeah.
Fabulous.
Hey,
Nmap
You're
minus
so old.
P.
You're so old.
I am.
Doesn't that suck? All right, Nmap minus P, port 80, because we want this to go fast. And we'll say -- script is equal to / first NSE. And I'll go over here to my browser and grab the IP address because I'm lazy. And we'll turn this thing loose. And there you go. Here's our output. Like I said, it's going to be tied back to a port, 80 TCP, HTTP, and we get our output, the name of the script, and hello world. So nice and simple way of getting started doing that. I'm going to write one more quick script to show something that might be a little bit more useful, and we'll go to there. So the next one, we're just going to go ahead and grab the cookies from this web server. So we're going to have to import a couple more things. We're going to do local short port again to import for our port rule. Acquire short port. We're going to use the HTTP library because we're going to actually interact with the HTTP response, or request and response.
Which is nice to give you those facilities. It makes it pretty easy to write stuff.
Absolutely, because I don't want to write my own parser for HTTP. Thank you very much. And because we're going to use the some NSE libraries, we use, or the standard NSE library, we will import that. And we have to give it our description again. Get cookies, because that's where we're going to pull out of this thing. Categories. Curly brackets, double quotes, safe. And we're done with the head. Move on to the rule. I love autocomplete, how it helps out like that. Port rule is equal to short port .http. And the action finally.
Finally, some action.
Finally, some action. All right, so action is equal to function. We're going to set up the host and the port again. end out our function before we get too far into this, and I'll say, now for every HTTP request, we need to send the path that we're going to request in. So you're going to send the host, the port that it's assigned to, and then the path. So if I wanted to go to a subdirectory or what have you, we need to specify that. So I'm going to do a variable called path here, and we'll pull this out of the Nmap arguments. So nmap.registry.args.path. If path is not set, or in Lua world is nil, then we'll go ahead and set a default of path is equal to / and that if statement.
His typing's getting better, folks.
Yeah, a little bit.
He's on a roll.
Local response. So we're going to declare a variable called response. So I'm keeping it local scoped inside of this function. Local response is equal to http.get. Now this would be a post, http.post if I was making a post request. But http.get, host, port, and the path. Because remember, for our HTTP request, we have to have path. And then we need to declare something to hold our cookies. So we'll have to create a cookie jar. And remember back when I said earlier that all data structures like arrays and whatnot are considered tables. So we do this local cookie jar, in this case, equal to open curly bracket, closing curly bracket. And then I'll do a for loop to look through our HTTP response and pull out the cookies. So I'll do for underscore cookie. So I'm declaring a variable called cookie, and I'm using the underscore to get rid of extra trash that's going to come back from this. In pairs, which is a function to pull out basically key value pairs. Response.cookies. Cookies spelling. And then we're going to do something. And we'll do table.insert into the cookie jar.
Who inserted the cookie in the cookie jar?
Isn't that some kid's song? That's some kid's song.
Yeah. Who stole the cookie from the cookie
Yeah,
jar?
one of my sons used to play that over and over and over again.
Yep.
Bringing back nightmares, Larry.
Sorry, man.
Man, I must be distant from that because I don't remember it. My kids are older, though. They're 17 and 18. All right.
Different
cookie name.
jar.
So I'm assigning a value, bit of string here that will append to this. And if I want to append text to, let's say, a variable, you do the text and then close out with the quotes, and then you use ... instead of like a plus symbol that would use in other languages. And then cookie.name, ... again, and then I'm going to grab the value of the cookie is equal to ... again and cookie.value, and we'll just close that out there. Got my ending statement in the complete. And so what's happening in this for loop is it's going to loop through the response, grab the cookies, toss them into this table. And then we just have to return that back to the NSE, Nmap Scripting Engine. And so we'll do standard return standard NSE dot format output and the cookie jar, true, and the cookie jar. So we're going to format the output, and we're going to toss it in the table that we're going to have formatted. And that should do it. And so in 28 lines here, basically, I'm pulling out all of the cookies. And if this works, it will get us our cookies. So we'll save this as getcookie.nsc. Turn back to my terminal. And in this case, instead of first.nsc, we'll do get-cookie.nsc.
There's no way you wrote 28 lines of code live and it's going to work on the first shot. I'm just saying. I'll be impressed. I'll be impressed. Oh!
All right. It exploded.
I jinxed it.
But
It's my fault.
You did. You did. Okay, actually, though, this brings up a good point and something I wanted to mention.
Yeah, it's great, actually, example of how you're going to debug it, right?
Yeah, because one of the things you can do is when you're writing this, you're going to screw it up. You just do -D on the end of it for debug, and you rerun it again, and it tells you exactly where in the script you screwed up. In this case, on line 12 is where I messed up. I got a syntax error near a function, so I go up to line 12, action. Yeah, there it is. I forgot an equal sign.
Action equals, right?
equals function.
I was going to say that earlier, but I wanted it to error out for the sake of the learning for everyone.
Syntax.
Right.
I'm just kidding.
Syntax is a bit.
It's always going to bite you. All right, so we'll rerun this again. Nmap -P for port 80 -- script equals ./getcookie.nse, our target IP. We'll rerun it, and I didn't get any cookies back. It's obviously blown up in my face.
It's all right.
What did I screw up? Response, local response, get port path.
We still love you, Jason. Live demos are really hard, especially when you're writing code.
Especially when you're writing code. I was trying to be brave here. I actually got away with this in a conference one time, so I was feeling.
You must have been
overconfident.
You must have been really pumped.
I was actually amazed when it worked. All right, so either I'm not getting a cookie back from my WordPress install, or I've screwed up something here. Response.cookies, cookie jar.
But I think the audience gets the point. NSE scripting is really high level and
It's
really
pretty easy.
That was easy. And I didn't even do
Yeah.
it.
Yeah,
I mean, it's pretty straightforward. One of the things that's a little bit off-putting, I think, to folks writing their own scripts, is the documentation is pretty sparse. Do you guys have the Nmap book written by Fyodor? I'm sure.
Yes.
Which is a great resource. But if you look at how to write NSE scripts, it's a very short section.
Yeah.
Really, the best way I could recommend to learn how to write NSE scripts is do something like I'm doing here, where you pick a task and you tell it, you just look at example scripts and go for it. I wrote another script last night. I was messing around with it that basically goes to WordPress.org, grabs the latest version number, hits this default install of WordPress, and collects that off the HTTP generator tag that gets added and compares it to and tells you whether or not you're up to date or not.
Hey, so Jason, I got a question. Does the Lua documentation help you with the NSE scripts, or is that more of a detraction?
It absolutely does help, because you're going to use NSE, Lua libraries like pairs, for example, or iPairs is another one.
Yeah.
And it's really well documented. Lua itself is really well documented.
Yeah, I can attest to that. I mean, Ed Scotus made fun of me, but I had a book on Lua. He's like, you need a book? I'm like, yeah, it helped with all the syntax to know and see examples of how. That's one thing that was frustrating me, with Docker, for example. Mm-hmm. There's a difference between documentation and proven examples of it. You can read how you're supposed to do something, but unless you see something that's relatively close. Now, as Jason pointed out, if you go look at the NSE scripts that are in Nmap, they're pretty advanced. So if you're just getting into Lua and NSE scripting, the example, I like that Jason has basic examples here, because most of the NSE scripts are really advanced. On an episode a long time ago, Jason, which I was glad you brought this back up again, I wrote an NSE script that implemented a banner grabber. So it didn't matter, whatever the service was, I just wanted whatever was going to get thrown back at me.
Yep.
Regardless of the protocol. And the team, I don't know if they used my script as a basis or if they just started over from scratch, wrote a way more advanced version of it. So it was pretty cool. I like that they actually liked the idea, the concept of it, they liked and implemented it, which is great.
Awesome.
Well, no, I've got a follow-on question, and that is, how much does NSE scripting, what's the word I'm looking for? Deviate from just purely the Lua documentation. I mean, where do you run out of steam, I suppose?
So the biggest area that I get into trouble with when I'm writing NSE scripts is things like I'm getting multiple values back. How do I pass this result back to Nmap in a way that it's going to understand it and display it properly to the end user? And that's that boundary right there is where I start scratching my head.
So it's really the Lua integration with Nmap is where you get some challenges. Then that's what you're saying.
Yeah, I mean, if you're inside the function and you're doing things, it's really pretty good. It's not terribly hard to, at least in my experience so far, to work with it. But when it gets into that tie where all of a sudden now we're passing things back to Nmap and making sure that it's, like I said, it's going to show up right and be understandable to the end user. That's where I start to have to do some experimentation.
Yeah, I gotcha. And experimentation is good. It's good. It's good and it's healthy. And it's part of the learning process. The challenge, of course, is you're not really knowing what to expect. So you can only look at other Nmap scripts to get a sense of how to do things. And that's not bad. Fortunately, there's a good library there, right? And you can get some pretty good ideas of what's going on.
Yeah, and I've got some links here up on the screen now that I found to be useful in my learning. One is the Lua book. That's the first one because I was new to Lua. You've got the Nmap book. They've got quite a bit of that online, actually, and the NSE portion is there, as well as the NSE documentation. And then, like I said, look at existing scripts. Look for simple existing scripts. Some of these get really way out there. And then I did check my scripts into GitHub. And so you can pull them. I've got the GitHub link there. You can pull them down and use those as examples as well.
Awesome. So, Jason, that was great. It was we hadn't covered Nmap and NSE in several years. So thank you for bringing us up to date and giving a nice tutorial. With that, we're going to take a short break, come back, talk about the security news for this week. Stay tuned. Don't go anywhere.